The day my bones talked back. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe so I can tell more interesting stories. Now let's get started. It all started with a sneeze. Not a dramatic sneeze, mind you, just your average garden variety achoo. I was standing by the kitchen sink rinsing blueberries when I felt a small pop in my back, followed by a heat that spread like a slow match being lit in the middle of my spine. I thought it was a cramp. I stretched, twisted, took a breath, and then the pain answered back like, "Nice try, champ." I would later find out I'd fractured a vertebra, just from sneezing. That's when my bones stopped being an afterthought and became a screaming headline in my life. You know how you go about your day, assuming your body's just doing its thing, pumping blood, digesting sandwiches, keeping you vertical. I did too, until that day. My bones, once silent scaffolding, suddenly had an opinion about everything: how I sat, what I lifted, and even how long I stood in line at the pharmacy. They'd become like that one bitter coworker who complains under their breath all day. Passive-aggressive, but relentless. What struck me most, besides the obvious pain, was the fact that no one else seemed shocked. "Oh yeah," my doctor said, with the bedside charm of a tax auditor. Early signs of osteoporosis. Very common in your age group. Excuse me, my age group. I went home with a back brace, a pamphlet titled Bone Health Basics, and the crushing realization that I had officially entered that phase of life. The one where your joints click when you sit down and your calendar includes words like DEXA scan. The truth is, bone loss doesn't announce itself with a marching band. It sneaks in silently like a raccoon raiding your attic. Historians still debate whether the ancient Egyptians were the first to recognize osteoporosis as a disease or simply blamed the gods when old people crumbled. Either way, the signs were always there. We just weren't listening. Let me paint you a picture. The human skeleton renews itself every 10 years. That's right. Like a cellular version of house renovation. New beams, new drywall, same creaky foundation. The only problem is after a certain age, especially in women, your body stops building as fast as it breaks down. And here's the kicker. By the time you realize your bones are thinning, you've usually already lost a significant portion of your bone mass. Like me, with a hairline fracture from a sneeze. Now, because I'm the kind of person who processes anxiety by researching things to death, I went down the rabbit hole. I started reading about trabecular versus cortical bone, about osteoblasts and osteoclasts, basically the good guys and bad guys in the Marvel movie inside your body. Osteoblasts build bone. Osteoclasts tear it down. If the osteoclasts win too often, you end up brittle. I also found out giraffes have incredibly dense bones. Bizarre, right? Despite their long, skinny legs and high blood pressure from pumping blood to their heads, giraffes rarely suffer from the kind of bone fragility we do. Must be nice. Anyway, back to me and the blueberries. The fracture, ironically, turned out to be a blessing. A very painful, ice pack-worthy blessing. It forced me to take a long, uncomfortable look at my lifestyle. I wasn't sedentary, but I wasn't particularly mindful either. My idea of exercise was walking to the mailbox with a podcast. My calcium came mostly from cheese on nachos. And my idea of sun exposure was standing by a window with SPF 50 and squinting angrily at the outdoors. I remember lying on the couch with my heating pad watching a documentary about ancient mummies. Some of the skeletons, carbon dated to thousands of years ago, had denser bones than most people today. Despite the fact that these ancient humans didn't have supplements or yoga or posture-correcting chairs, it made me wonder, how did we become so fragile? Historians still debate whether our modern conveniences like cushy chairs and escalators have helped us evolve or devolve. One thing's certain, we move less, and our bones suffer more. Bones thrive on resistance. They need a challenge, like a teenager who secretly wants boundaries. No challenge, no strength. I started noticing little things. The way I hunched when I texted, the way I leaned on one leg when I stood, the subtle fear I had when stepping off a curb too quickly. And most of all, the way I'd say, "Ugh, I'm getting old," with a laugh, when underneath I didn't think it was funny at all. So I made a decision. I was going to get ahead of my bones before they got ahead of me again. I bought resistance bands. I made a calcium chart. I told my friend Melissa she was no longer allowed to bring diet soda into my house, not unless she wanted a stern lecture and a side of kale. And I started listening to my bones. Really listening. Every ache had a voice. Every pop had a story. They weren't just background noise anymore. They were the main character. Calcium's sneaky disappearing act. You know how people say, "Drink your milk for strong bones"? Yeah, turns out it's not that simple. If that were all it took, I'd have titanium ribs by now. I grew up with milk mustaches in every family photo, yet here I was, one sneeze away from being bubble wrapped for life. After the fracture, I became obsessed with calcium. Like weirdly obsessed. I started checking food labels like I was hunting for buried treasure. Cheese, yes. Yogurt, double yes. Kale, fine. But then came the twist. My doctor told me I wasn't necessarily absorbing the calcium I was eating. Wait, what? Apparently, you can have plenty of calcium in your diet, but if your body isn't absorbing it correctly, it's basically like trying to water a dead plant. The minerals pass through like tourists at a gift shop, stopping to glance, then moving on without buying anything. Historians still debate whether ancient Roman women, known for their high dairy diets, had stronger bones than modern women. Some studies of Roman skeletons suggest they had better bone density, while others argue their active lifestyles played a bigger role. Either way, the takeaway seems to be, it's not just what you eat, it's what your bones actually keep. So I had to get nerdy again. It turns out calcium absorption is a diva. It needs an entourage. It wants vitamin D to help escort it through the intestinal lining. It wants magnesium to balance the mood. And it doesn't want to compete with iron or caffeine or anything else that steals its spotlight. Which brings me to the bizarre fact of the day. Astronauts in space lose bone mass at an alarming rate even with carefully controlled diets. Why? Because weightlessness removes the stress bones need to stay strong. No gravity, no challenge, bones throwing a tantrum. It's like being in a zero-G spa for your skeleton, but with terrifying consequences back on Earth. I started doing the math. I thought my daily calcium intake was decent until I realized that I wasn't hitting anywhere near the recommended 200 milligrams per day for women my age. That's before considering how much of that I might actually absorb. And did you know that as you get older, your stomach produces less acid, which further hampers absorption? Of course, no one tells you this when you're young and busy doing yoga on hard floors. So I upped my calcium game. Not just with supplements, which can sometimes cause more harm than good if overdone, but through food. Sardines, chia seeds, tofu, almonds. I basically turned my pantry into a crunchy hipster Instagram feed. And then came the real eye-opener: stress. Yup. Stress triggers the release of cortisol, a hormone that, among other lovely things, can interfere with calcium metabolism and bone formation. It's like your body's way of saying, "You're already tense. Great, let's make you brittle too." That explained a lot. I was juggling work deadlines, family drama, and mild existential dread, all while trying to remember if I'd taken my calcium chew that day. The truth is, I'd been living in a stress storm for years, and my bones had quietly been paying the price. I remember one evening staring into my fridge, debating whether I wanted Greek yogurt or ice cream. Greek yogurt has calcium, I said out loud. My cat looked at me like, so does ice cream technically. And that's when it hit me. My approach to bone health couldn't just be reactive. It had to be proactive. I couldn't wait for another sneeze incident or worse to slap me awake. There was a shift happening not just in my bones, but in my mindset. I stopped thinking of calcium as some old person nutrient. I started treating it like an investment, like money in the bone bank. And every time I made a better food choice, every time I took a deep breath instead of freaking out, I imagined my osteoblasts doing a little victory dance. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. I still eat pizza. I still forget to stretch. But I also have leafy greens in my smoothies, and I carry around a tiny container of almonds, like some sort of snack squirrel. Also, and this might sound ridiculous, but I started talking to my bones, not out loud, well, sometimes out loud, but mostly just silently. You've got this, I'd think, as I climbed stairs. Hold it together, I'd whisper during yoga. It's oddly comforting, like having an internal support group that creaks but never complains. One afternoon, I was in the line at the grocery store when I overheard a teenager behind me say, "Why do old people shrink?" I turned around, slowly, spine perfectly aligned, like I was demonstrating for a chiropractor's brochure, and smiled. "Gravity and bone loss mostly," I said, "but also time." They blinked at me like I was Yoda. Look, aging doesn't have to mean surrender. You don't just give up your bones like they're car keys to a teenager. You fight for them. You feed them. You listen when they whisper. And occasionally, you argue back. Because, at the end of the day, your bones are you quietly holding you up, step by invisible step. The sun. The shadow and vitamin D. So here's the thing about sunlight: I used to hate it. Not in a vampire way, but in a "why is it so bright and sweaty out here" kind of way. I was a devout indoor enthusiast. My complexion was practically reflective. My windows were always shaded, and I considered sunscreen a food group. But after my bone incident, guess what my doctor said? Go outside more. Excuse me, I thought we were trying to fix me, not roast me like a rotisserie chicken. That's when vitamin D entered the chat. Turns out, vitamin D is like the ultimate backstage manager for calcium. Without it, calcium doesn't know where to go or how to work. It's like calcium's just wandering around your bloodstream, aimlessly waiting for instructions. Vitamin D grabs it by the metaphorical collar and says, "Follow me, we've got a skeleton to feed." So I had to make peace with the sun. I started taking short walks early in the morning or late in the afternoon when the light was less judgmental. I sat on the balcony for 10 minutes a day, like I was trying to photosynthesize. My neighbors probably thought I'd taken up sun worshipping, but hey, bones before dignity. Historians still debate whether prehistoric humans got enough vitamin D from diet alone, or relied more heavily on sun exposure due to their outdoor lifestyles. Some skeletons show surprisingly little bone loss, while others have signs of early deterioration, suggesting that even back then, bone health wasn't guaranteed. Now, here's the weird part. Vitamin D isn't actually a vitamin. It's a hormone precursor. That's right. Your body makes it when UVB rays from the sun hit your skin and kick off a series of transformations. It's like your own little science lab bubbling away invisibly. And this hormone, it tells your intestines to absorb more calcium. Without it, your intestines are like, "What calcium?" I got a blood test around this time just to check things. My levels were low. Not scarily low, but definitely below I confidently jump off curbs territory. So I started supplementing just a modest 1,000 IU per day. Nothing crazy. But between that and my reluctant sun exposure, things started shifting. I swear, I could feel my bones appreciating it. Probably placebo effect. But hey, placebo or not, my mood lifted. I slept better. My joints didn't creak like haunted furniture every morning. And that's when I learned something even stranger. Vitamin D also affects muscle function, immunity, and inflammation. So yeah, that's why I now treat sunlight like a free spa treatment, just with better SPF. One afternoon while walking through the park, I saw a group of older folks doing Tai Chi under the trees. Slow, graceful, deliberate, like human poetry. One of the instructors, probably in her 70s, moved like she had oil in her joints. I asked her about it after class. Bones are solar powered, she told me with a smile. I wanted to write that on a t-shirt. Speaking of bizarre solar powered things, did you know mushrooms can produce vitamin D when exposed to sunlight? They don't just look weird, they are weird. If you leave certain mushrooms in the sun for a while, they actually generate vitamin D too. Nature is a chaotic genius. But even with all this newfound appreciation for sunshine, I had to be careful. Too much sun, and I'd look like a crispy crouton. Too little, and my bones would whisper threateningly. So I did what every modern adult does. I overanalyzed it. Apps timers, UV index charts. I even bought a wide-brimmed hat that made me look like a beekeeper's apprentice. Style was sacrificed. Bones were not. And then just when I thought I had it all under control, winter hit. Cue the panic. Less sunlight meant less vitamin D. My balcony sessions were replaced with gray skies and existential gloom. I felt my energy dipping, my motivation flailing, and my bones. They were probably sending a formal complaint to my endocrine system, so I adjusted. I bumped up the supplements slightly during winter. I started eating more vitamin D-rich foods, salmon, fortified cereals, and yes, those weird sun-baked mushrooms. I also bought one of those full-spectrum light lamps that promised to simulate sunshine. Did it work? Maybe. Did I stare into it like it owed me money? Absolutely. Through all this, I noticed something. My relationship with my body was changing. I stopped treating it like a vehicle and started treating it like a garden. It needed light nutrition balance. It needed maintenance. And most of all, it needed me to pay attention. I thought about all the years I spent ignoring my body's subtle cries for help, the fatigue I blamed on work, the aches I laughed off, the stiffness I shrugged at. It wasn't just aging, it was neglect. Historians still debate how modern sedentary life compares to our ancestors' sun-soaked days of hunting, foraging, and avoiding saber-toothed tigers. But one thing's certain, we've traded movement and daylight for screens and shadows. And our bones, they're not thrilled about it. So now, I walk in the sun like it's medicine. I let it hit my face, my arms, my soul. I don't tan. I don't burn. I just absorb. 10 minutes here, 15 there. Little acts of solar generosity. And when people ask why I'm standing in my driveway with my arms out like I'm conducting an invisible orchestra, I just smile and say, it's for the bones. They usually back away slowly, which is perfect. More sunlight for me. When lifting a laundry basket feels like deadlifts. It happened on a Tuesday. I bent down to pick up a laundry basket, just a regular plastic one filled with shirts, towels, and the occasional single sock that had clearly given up on life. I lifted it like I always had. Except this time, I felt something stretch in my lower back. Not snap, not tear, just stretch. Like my spine was whispering, "You sure about this?" That's when I realized I was no longer lifting laundry. I was deadlifting disappointment. See, after my fracture and newfound calcium vitamin D obsession, I thought I was doing pretty well. Eating right, catching some sun, even mumbling "you got this" to my bones like a motivational speaker with a bad audience. But I hadn't done the one thing that truly physically builds bones: resistance training. Historians still debate whether the ancient Greeks, with their rigorous Olympic training, unintentionally preserved their skeletons better than any calcium supplement could. The evidence: many of their skeletal remains show remarkable bone density. Was it the diet? The olive oil? The endless discus throwing? Probably all of it. Anyway, back to me and my rebellious laundry basket. After that incident, I found myself Googling things like, can bones get stronger after 40? And weightlifting for people who don't like gyms. Because I don't. I really, really don't. The smell, the judgmental mirrors, the people grunting like they're passing a kidney stone. No, thank you. So I started small. I found an old pair of 5-pound dumbbells in my garage that had clearly been retired since the Clinton administration. I dusted them off, stood in front of the TV, and started doing bicep curls while watching reruns of The Office. Was I building muscle? Maybe. Was I making Michael Scott proud? Absolutely. At first, everything felt ridiculous. Squats without weights, wall sits, calf raises while brushing my teeth. I even curled soup cans when the dumbbells felt too ambitious. It was like fitness for shy introverts. But it worked. My posture improved. My core engaged. My crone stopped heckling me every time I stood up too fast. Here's the thing. Most people don't realize bones need stress. Not the emotional kind, obviously. We've got enough of that. I'm talking about physical stress, impact, resistance load. When you give bones a job to do, they respond by remodeling and reinforcing themselves. Without that, they get lazy and weak, like teenagers in summer. And it's not just heavy weights. Even low-impact resistance like yoga or Tai Chi or using resistance bands can signal your bones to toughen up. It's like telling them, hey, this body still has stuff to lift. Better shape up. Now, for your daily dose of bizarre science chickens raised in zero-gravity environments, grow weaker leg bones than those on Earth. No joke. Turns out, even poultry needs resistance to keep their bones from turning into noodles. Space chickens. Who knew? Back on Earth. I started tracking my progress. Not in pounds lifted, but in weird little victories. Getting off the couch, without groaning, carrying groceries up the stairs, without feeling like I'd climbed Everest, twisting open a pickle jar without summoning a neighbor. These things matter. I even downloaded a fitness app for bone health, yes, that exists, and it kept sending me encouraging messages like, you're stronger than you think, and your skeleton says thank you. I may or may not have teared up at one of those. One day, while doing squats with a backpack full of rice, don't ask, I realized something wild. I kind of liked this. Not in a join a CrossFit cult way, but in a quiet, satisfying my body is doing what it's supposed to kind of way. It felt like I was finally participating in my own well-being instead of outsourcing it to supplements and wishful thinking. I even ventured into a beginner's strength class at the community center. It was full of people like me recovering couch potatoes with a vendetta against osteoporosis. We laughed, we winced, we shared compression sock recommendations. It was weirdly wholesome. At one point, we were all lying on yoga mats doing leg lifts, and the instructor said, every time you lift, imagine your bones absorbing that energy like little power stations. I did, and I imagined my osteoblasts fist-bumping each other like they'd just pulled off a heist movie. Historians still debate whether modern exercise routines are necessary because of our sedentary lives, or whether we've simply overcorrected with too much chair time. But let me tell you, after seeing what a little movement did to my balance confidence and even sleep, I'm team lift things and don't apologize. I even made a rule: if I watch Netflix, I have to do something. Stretch, squat, curl, plank, whatever. It's not punishment, it's prevention. And honestly, my shows feel better with a side of physical activity. Except maybe horror movies. Don't try to plank through The Exorcist. Bad idea. Now I don't fear laundry baskets. I respect them. I lift with intention. I bend with awareness. I still grunt occasionally, but it's a confident grunt, not a cry for help. And no, I haven't turned into a fitness guru. I still skip workouts. I still choose naps over planks. But I keep coming back. Because this isn't about perfection. It's about protection. Because bones, remember, caffeine, cola, and the case of the crumbly spine. There are two kinds of people in the world: those who need coffee to function, and those who lie. I was solidly in the first camp. Coffee in the morning, iced coffee in the afternoon. Maybe a cheeky espresso shot if I had to deal with customer service. It was less of a drink and more of a coping mechanism. So when I learned that my beloved coffee, and worse, my occasional soda, might be contributing to my brittle bones, I stared into my mug like it had personally betrayed me. Now, before you panic, let me clarify. Caffeine isn't the bone-devouring monster some headlines make it out to be. But like a mischievous raccoon at a garden party, it can cause a bit of chaos, especially when you're not getting enough calcium to begin with. Too much caffeine may interfere with calcium absorption and increase calcium excretion through urine, meaning every time you sip that triple shot caramel delight, you might be giving your bones a one-way ticket to Sadville. Historians still debate whether ancient civilizations, like the early Chinese dynasties who drank green tea religiously, experienced the same issues. The teas they consumed had lower caffeine levels than modern brews, and their diets were often more mineral-rich. But even with all their wisdom, bone loss wasn't unheard of. In fact, some excavated skeletons show clear signs of early degeneration in the elderly. So back to me and my guilt latte. At first, I tried denial. Surely 1 or 2 coffees a day wasn't going to turn my femur into a pretzel stick. But then I remembered something from my reading binge. It's not just about the coffee. It's the whole gang of acidic carbonated troublemakers. Enter cola. You see, soda, especially cola, is a different beast. It contains phosphoric acid, which sounds like something you use to clean a car engine. In moderate doses, it's fine. But excessive cola consumption. Hello, 2 cans a day habit from my college years can mess with the body's calcium-phosphorus balance. Too much phosphorus and not enough calcium. Your body panics. It tries to fix the imbalance by pulling calcium from your bones. It's like your skeleton becomes the emergency fund that your body raids whenever your nutrition goes off track. And for some bizarre science of the day, there was once a woman in the early 2000s who drank more than a gallon of cola every day for 5 years. She showed up at the hospital with a spinal fracture. Doctors eventually linked her extreme soda habit to severe hypokalemia and bone demineralization. Her bones were quite literally crumbling under the weight of soda loyalty. After reading that, I looked at my fridge the way someone looks at a cheating partner. Hurt, betrayed, holding a receipt, so I cut back. Not completely. Let's not get ridiculous, but I made a conscious effort. 1 cup of coffee in the morning, sipped like liquid gold. Herbal tea in the afternoon. And soda banned, gone. Evicted from my life like a bad roommate who doesn't pay rent and eats your leftovers. But breaking up with caffeine wasn't just a physical challenge. It was emotional. Coffee was part of my identity, my morning ritual, my comfort blanket in a mug. I had to replace the ritual before the withdrawal set in. So I upgraded to Chic Mug's frothy almond milk lattes and added cinnamon like I was auditioning for a Pinterest board. And you know what? My energy evened out. I wasn't jittery. I wasn't crashing at 3 p.m. I actually slept better. Apparently, not vibrating from the inside out is good for you. Who knew? Still, it wasn't all smooth sailing. One morning, I absent-mindedly ordered a large cola at a drive-thru. I took one sip and immediately tasted betrayal. It was fizzy, yes, but hollow. Like my bones were whispering, really, after all we've been through. Historians still debate whether our modern diets full of processed sugars, acidic drinks, and caffeine are the real culprits behind skyrocketing osteoporosis rates, or whether it's our lack of physical activity. Probably both. But cutting back on the bone bandits definitely helps. So now, I drink water like I'm getting paid for it. I spritz lemon in it for flair. I sip chamomile tea and pretend I'm more zen than I actually am. And every time I smell freshly brewed coffee, I nod in respect, but I don't refill my cup. Well, not every time. I'm not a monk. These days, I think of my bones like a savings account. Every choice, whether it's skipping that second coffee, resisting the soda, or adding leafy greens to my lunch, is a deposit. Every time I skip resistance training chug cola or forget my vitamin D, it's a withdrawal. And let me tell you, I'm not going bankrupt again. I've felt what that overdraft fee feels like: cracked vertebrae and back braces. No thank you. I still keep a can of soda in the back of my fridge. Not to drink, just as a reminder, like a little shrine to the past. It's sitting there, gathering dust, next to an expired bottle of ranch dressing and my youthful optimism. But these days, my bones are quieter. Not silent, but calmer. Less whiny, more stable. Like they trust me again. And all it took was a breakup with soda, a little caffeine humility, and a whole lot of almond milk. The bone thieves in my gut. Now let's talk about the part of the body that no one ever thinks about when it comes to bones: the gut. Yep, your intestines. The long, squiggly, underappreciated maze in your torso that, if laid out flat, would be longer than a school bus and about as dramatic. For most of my life, I assumed the gut was just the thing that processed food and occasionally rebelled when I ate discount sushi. But it turns out this unsung organ system plays a major role in, drumroll, bone health. One day, I was reading a health blog. Yes, I read those now. I've become that person and stumbled on the phrase gut-bone axis. At first, I thought it was a typo, but no, it's an actual term. Scientists are now studying how your gut microbiome, basically the bacterial zoo living inside you, helps regulate bone density. And the worst part, I had been treating my gut like a back alley junkyard. Let me explain. Back in my 20s, I took antibiotics like breath mints, sore throat antibiotics, suspicious pimple antibiotics, roommate sneezed near me, antibiotics. And all that medication didn't just kill the bad bacteria. It wiped out the good guys, too. The ones that help your gut digest. Nutrients manage inflammation, and apparently send little molecular telegrams to your bones saying, keep building. Historians still debate whether ancient cultures that fermented their food, like Koreans with kimchi or Eastern Europeans with sauerkraut, had better overall bone health due to a more robust gut microbiome. It's hard to draw direct lines, but there's growing evidence that fermentation wasn't just about flavor. It was an early form of internal insurance. So I had to face the truth. My gut was underfunded, underappreciated, and a little angry. I also discovered something worse. Certain medications, like proton pump inhibitors, you know those things for heartburn, can interfere with calcium absorption by lowering stomach acid. And you need stomach acid to dissolve and absorb minerals. Without it, the calcium you eat might just pass through like a confused tourist in Times Square. Now, here's the bizarre science of the day. Some gut bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids that have been shown to stimulate bone formation. Yes, you read that right. Tiny microbes, smaller than a dust particle, can help grow bones. The body is weird, and I respect that. After the initial panic wore off, I began a gut renovation. No bulldozers required. I started eating more fiber. Not in a grandma with bran muffins way, but in a modern Instagram-friendly way. Oats, lentils, leafy greens, and the occasional sprinkle of chia seeds, like I was casting a bone-strengthening spell. I also added fermented foods. Greek yogurt became a staple. Kimchi made an appearance, despite my spice intolerance. I even gave kombucha a try, though it tasted like soda, trying to be healthy and failing like a gym membership for your mouth. Still, I persisted. And then came the probiotics. I bought a bottle of capsules that promised to support digestive harmony and immune strength. What I really wanted was for them to send a memo to my bones that help had arrived. Whether it worked because of science or placebo, I'll never know. But a few weeks later, my digestion was smoother, my bloating calmed down, and my energy felt more stable. I also cut down on sugar. Apparently, excess sugar can mess with your gut microbiome and cause inflammation, which is like throwing a Molotov cocktail into your bone-building party. So I broke up with cupcakes. Painful, necessary. Historians still debate whether the modern Western diet, with its processed foods, artificial sweeteners, and sugar overload, is the silent killer of gut bacteria and, by extension, bone strength. It's hard to say exactly what our ancestors ate every day, but I guarantee it wasn't rainbow sprinkles and microwave pizza. Around this time, I also noticed something peculiar. My skin looked better. My mood improved. And get this, I didn't get my usual seasonal cold. Was it the kombucha, the probiotics, the Greek yogurt, or just dumb luck? Honestly, I didn't care. My gut was happy, and that meant my bones were too. I read a story about a woman who developed osteoporosis in her early 40s due to chronic gastrointestinal issues. Her body had literally stopped absorbing nutrients properly. And the longer it went untreated, the more her bones dissolved behind the scenes. Her diagnosis came not with a break, but with shrinking. She lost over 2 inches in height before anyone thought to scan her bones. That story haunted me. Because the truth is, bone loss doesn't feel like anything until it does. Until the fracture, the stoop, the slow inching downward that we all think is just aging. It's not. Sometimes it's your gut quietly sabotaging your skeleton. So now, I treat my gut like a fragile ecosystem. I don't overfeed it sugar. I don't blast it with antibiotics unless I truly need them. I feed it fiber and fermented foods, and even talk to it like it's a picky houseplant. Here's your kefir, I mutter in the morning. Don't say I never do anything for you. Do I miss pizza rolls at midnight? Of course. Do I miss the days when I could eat gas station nachos and still feel invincible? Deeply. But I'd rather have bones that work than nostalgia for a digestive system that didn't. Because now, I know bone thieves don't always come in the form of bad posture or aging. Sometimes they live inside you, tiny, microscopic, and easily ignored. Until you wise up and start feeding your gut like your bones depend on it, because they do. Menopause. The great bone robbery. There's something they don't tell you about menopause. Actually, there are many things they don't tell you. But here's one that hit me like a slow motion avalanche. Menopause is not just about hot flashes and mood swings. It's also a full-scale assault on your skeleton. Seriously, it's like your bones throw a secret retirement party. Forget to invite you, and then just quietly stop showing up for work. It started subtly. A little more stiffness in the morning. Slight creaks in my hips when I stood up. I blamed it on my mattress, my shoes, the weather. Anything but the truth. I was losing estrogen. And fast. Estrogen, as it turns out, is not just the hormonal villain from your teenage years. It's the unsung hero of bone health. It helps regulate the balance between bone building and bone breakdown. When estrogen levels drop, as they do dramatically during menopause, osteoclasts, those bone-destroying cells throw a party. And nobody stops them. No security, no limits, just destruction. Historians still debate whether menopausal women in hunter-gatherer societies experience the same bone loss rates we see today. Some argue they were too active for bone degradation to progress as it does in modern sedentary women. Others say shorter lifespans made it harder to reach the brittle years. Either way, modern medicine agrees menopause marks a sharp turn on the bone health highway. I didn't realize how fast it could happen until my second DEXA scan. Bone mineral density lower than last year. Cue panic. I stared at the numbers like they were betrayal written in decimal points. My doctor looked at me and said, "This is very typical postmenopausal bone loss. Nothing alarming yet." Yet I squeaked, gripping the exam table like it might save me from crumbling. Menopause doesn't just sneak in with a fan and a bottle of ice water, it breaks into your internal architecture. Suddenly, you're Googling things like best supplements for postmenopausal women and how much weight training to avoid turning into a rice cracker. Let's get one thing straight. The average woman loses up to 20% of her bone density in the first 5 to 7 years after menopause. That's 1/5 of your skeletal support team just walking off the job. So yeah, I was concerned. I started keeping a bone diary. Don't laugh. It was just a little notebook where I tracked calcium intake, sunlight exposure resistance workouts, and yes, how many times I told menopause to go bother someone else. I also started looking into hormone replacement therapy, HRT. Controversial, I know. Historians and doctors still debate the long-term risks and benefits of HRT. Some say it's a miracle. Others say it's playing hormonal roulette. I didn't jump into it, but I learned everything I could just in case. For now, I stuck with a plant-based approach and lifestyle changes. But the option loomed in the back of my mind like a backup parachute. Here's something bizarre. Whales, elephants, and a few other mammals are among the rare species that go through menopause. It's believed to be an evolutionary strategy. Older females help the group survive by caring for younger generations. But guess what? Even in these animals, bone health takes a hit post-reproduction. We are apparently not that special. I told my best friend one day, "I feel like I'm slowly being hollowed out." She replied, "That's because you are, but you're also getting smarter, stronger, and much better at saying no." She was right. Menopause stripped a lot away, but it also gave me clarity and time. The time to rebuild. I doubled down on weight-bearing exercises. I wasn't just walking anymore. I was hiking. I wasn't just squatting. I was holding kettlebells. I bought ankle weights. I looked like a mall walker from the future, but I didn't care. I was loading my skeleton, and it was responding. I also started sleeping better. Not naturally, I had to tweak everything. No caffeine. Afternoon, Magnesium at night, blackout curtains, like I was hiding from the FBI. But I got there. And sleep. It turns out that's when bones repair. That's when hormones rebalance. So yeah, I started treating sleep like a sacred ritual. Pajamas laid out, tea brewed, phone across the room like a naughty toddler. And slowly, so slowly, I started to feel stable again. Not in the I'm invincible way. That ship had sailed. But in the I trust my body again way. The kind of quiet strength that doesn't shout, but shows up every time I carry my groceries without groaning. My favorite part of this stage, the rebellion. The realization that I didn't have to age the way my mother did. I didn't have to accept the slow decline. I could fight back not with denial, but with strategy. And maybe that's the core lesson menopause taught me. You can't stop the change, but you can steer the ship. So here I am, postmenopausal, still standing, still walking, still lifting, still full of sarcastic comments and probiotic yogurt. And when I look at my DEXA results now, I don't see fear. I see data, a guide, a snapshot in the ongoing battle between time and willpower. Menopause may have robbed me of some bone density, but it gave me a mission. One I intend to fulfill, one squat and kale salad at a time. Ancient bones and the secret to longevity. There's something humbling about staring at a 3,000-year-old skeleton and realizing that in many ways, that person might have had better bones than you. No Wi-Fi, no Pilates, no protein powders yet. Somehow they walked, more squatted, more lifted, more and aged, well sturdier. I went down a weird rabbit hole not long after my second DEXA scan. You know, the one that broke my heart a little. I started reading about ancient burial sites. I don't mean haunted ones. I mean the archaeological kind, where scientists dig up human remains to study how people lived and died. And guess what? Some of those ancient bones are in remarkably good shape. Historians still debate whether this was due to superior diets, physical activity, or simply survival bias, as in only the healthiest made it to old age. But there's no denying it. Early humans didn't spend their lives hunched over laptops or binge-watching true crime documentaries. They moved a lot. They climbed, carried, hunted, built. Their bodies had to be strong because their lives depended on it. So naturally, I had questions. What did these people eat? How did they move? And how were their bones without calcium supplements, gym memberships, or orthopedic mattresses stronger than mine? Here's what I learned. Ancient diets were varied, seasonal, and rich in minerals. Prehistoric humans consumed calcium through leafy greens bones from small animals. Yes, even bone marrow and naturally fermented foods. They got their vitamin D from the sun, and rarely, if ever, drank soda or coffee from paper cups with plastic lids. Also, they squatted all the time, to cook, to rest, well, everything. Squatting was the resting position, not chairs, not couches, just pure muscle-building squats. Honestly, my knees hurt just thinking about it. And here's today's weird fact. Scientists discovered that the skeletal remains of female medieval nuns who often lived in cloisters with restricted diets and limited activity had weaker bones than contemporary peasant women. The reason the peasants moved constantly. Daily farm labor, walking for miles, carrying water and firewood. Their bones told a story of strain and strength. That made me reevaluate my idea of active. Was I really moving enough? Or just occasionally stretching between sedentary marathons? So I did something I never thought I'd do. I joined a historical movement group. No, really. It was a class that mimicked ancestral movement. We crawled, squatted, climbed over things, and carried odd-shaped objects. Not dumbbells, but things like sandbags, buckets of water, even logs. They cleaned them, I asked. It was ridiculous and sweaty and surprisingly fun. And my bones, they loved it. I could feel my posture improving. My spine stopped whispering complaints. My hips moved more easily. And best of all, I felt capable. Like if the zombie apocalypse started tomorrow, I might actually survive the first day. There's a special kind of joy that comes from realizing your body, even after decades of quiet neglect, is still willing to cooperate. All it asks is that you treat it the way humans were meant to be treated, with movement, sunlight, nourishment, and the occasional moment of stillness. And that's another thing I learned from ancient lifestyles. Rest wasn't optional. It was built into the rhythm of life. Days began with the sun and ended with its setting. Meals were slow. Work was purposeful. Even spiritual practices were rooted in grounding movements, bowing, kneeling, walking meditations. All of it added up to a life that quietly supported bone health without anyone ever uttering the word osteoporosis. I thought about this one day while sitting in my climate-controlled living room, sipping herbal tea from a mug that said Calcium Queen. I looked down at my feet, bare-planted, and realized that despite all our modern advancements, we've lost the simplicity of movement, of grounding, of engaging with the world physically. Historians still debate whether our bones are failing us more today because of our lifestyle or our lifespans. We live longer, yes, but are we living stronger? Or are we simply extending the years we spend in slow decline? I don't have a perfect answer. But I know this: the more I move, like my ancestors, the more I feel like one. And not in a primitive cavewoman way, but in a powerful, resilient, quietly fierce way. Like my body's remembering something it knew all along. I even started gardening. Yes, me. With gloves and a hat and a kneeling pad, like a full-fledged suburban mom. And while digging holes for tomato plants doesn't sound like a revolutionary act, trust me, it is. Every squat, every lift, every reach into the soil is a reminder that my bones want to be useful. They want a reason to stay strong. Now, I'm not saying we should all move into huts and start butchering our own goats. I like my running water, thank you very much. But I do think we can learn a lot from those old bones buried in forgotten fields. They're not just artifacts. They're messages. Proof that strength isn't found in a pill bottle or a perfect diet. It's built slowly, deliberately, with every choice we make. So next time you stretch or squat to tie your shoes or walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, think of it as a conversation with your ancestors. A quiet thank you to the people who walked before us, the ones who didn't have machines to help them, but somehow managed to build bodies strong enough to survive the centuries. And if they could do it barefoot, with wooden tools and no internet, then surely we with our ergonomic shoes and access to yogurt can do it too. Dancing with dumbbells and denial. Let me be honest with you. I did not want to lift weights. When my doctor suggested strength training, I nodded politely while internally screaming. Sure, I'll get right on that, I said, while mentally filing it under things I will definitely avoid forever. I pictured grunting bodybuilders, confusing gym equipment, and the unmistakable sound of my own joints snapping like bubble wrap. But reality, as usual, had other plans. After enough research, fractured dignity, and warning signs from my spine, I finally admitted what I'd been avoiding. If I wanted my bones to last, I had to make them work. Bones, as I've learned grudgingly, are not passive structures. They respond to the demands we place on them, or the lack thereof. So I gave in. But if I was going down this path, I was doing it my way. No gym. No intimidating mirrors. No crop tops or techno music. I bought a pair of light dumbbells, some resistance bands, and started lifting in my living room. Usually, while wearing pajamas and watching old sitcoms. Honestly, 10-10, highly recommend. At first it felt absurd. I was curling 3-pound weights while muttering, "This is for you, femur." I'd follow that with half-hearted lunges and exaggerated exhalations, all while my dog watched in judgmental silence. But little by little, something changed, not just in my body, but in my attitude. Each session felt like reclaiming something. Not youth exactly, but strength, ownership. A weird kind of dignity that comes from choosing to face your weaknesses head on, even while wearing fuzzy socks. Historians still debate whether dancing was originally a ritual, a form of courtship, or just prehistoric humans trying to shake bugs out of their clothes. But across every ancient culture, dance is universal. Movement as celebration, as release, as power. So I danced. I made playlists full of 80s hits and bad pop songs, and I started dancing with dumbbells in my hands. Squats to synth beats. Overhead presses to Britney Spears. Was it ridiculous? Completely. Did I feel amazing? You bet. This wasn't just about reps and sets anymore. It was about joy. Movement that made me feel like me. Strong, silly, sweaty me. Here's the bizarre science fact for this chapter. Kangaroos have incredibly dense femurs because of their hopping. That repetitive impact stimulates crazy levels of bone strength, which made me wonder if kangaroos can hop their way to denser bones. What could dancing do for mine? The answer came quietly over time. I stood taller. My balance improved. One day I realized I could carry both grocery bags in one trip and unlock the door without shaking. A miracle. But perhaps the biggest shift happened in my mind. I stopped thinking of myself as fragile. That word had haunted me since the day of my fracture. It followed me into doctors' offices, clung to my spine during bad weather, whispered in my ear when I bent to pick up something heavy. Fragile. Like I'd become a crystal vase, pretty but untouchable. Not anymore. Resistance training did more than build muscle. It broke the cycle of fear. The slow erosion of confidence that so often comes with aging. I wasn't falling apart. I was getting rebuilt. Slowly, stubbornly, hilariously. Sure, I still had days where my knees ached, or I couldn't remember which ankle I twisted back in 2010. But now, I face those days with tools, not dread. A yoga mat, a pair of weights, a playlist, and a glass of water. Sometimes that's all it takes. And I wasn't alone. I met a woman in her 60s who taught Tai Chi at the community center. Her movements were so fluid, it looked like she was underwater. When I asked her why she started, she shrugged and said, "Because I didn't want to turn into my mom. Not cruel, just honest." Her mother had broken her hip at 72 and never fully recovered. She said I knew I had to do something before the fall, and that stuck with me. We spend so much time reacting, taking action only after the diagnosis, the injury, the warning. But bones don't wait. They need attention now, while they're still willing to respond. They need stress rhythm challenge. But most of all, they need movement you enjoy enough to keep doing. I once read that the best exercise for bone health is the one you'll stick with. And that's the truth. Whether it's lifting weights, dancing in the kitchen, hiking trails, or practicing Tai Chi under a tree. What matters is that you move, that you choose not to disappear. Historians still debate whether we've lost more than we've gained in our sedentary digital age. But there's no denying this our ancestors moved. Constantly. Not out of discipline, but necessity. And their bones thanked them. I may not live like a cave woman, but I can choose to move with intention. To dance like my skeleton depends on it. Because honestly, it does. So now, Every week, I have what I call bone parties. It's just me, my dumbbells, some music, and the sheer refusal to let time win without a fight. I dance, I lift, I laugh, I wobble, I fall sometimes, but I always get up. And as I wobble back to standing sweaty and out of breath, I think, this is how you build a legacy, one ridiculous squat at a time. The bone pact I made with myself. There's a moment somewhere between the first crack and the slow healing when you realize your body isn't just something you live in, it's something you live with. Like a roommate that has needs, quirks, grudges, and occasionally throws a tantrum when you forget to feed it properly. That moment came for me in the stillness of a Wednesday morning. The sun was coming through the window in soft stripes. I was sitting at the kitchen table, stirring my oatmeal, thinking about absolutely nothing. And then I looked down at my hands. The veins were a little more pronounced, the skin a little thinner than I remembered, and underneath it all, bones, quiet, humble, waiting for my attention. That was when I made the pact. It wasn't a dramatic movie-style speech, no candlelight, no mirror pep talk, just a simple promise I will take care of you. Every day, in small ways, in funny ways, in patient, stubborn, sometimes reluctant ways. But I won't abandon you again. That was the beginning of my bone rituals. Not rituals in the mystical sense, no chanting or moonlight ceremonies. Though I wouldn't rule those out if things get desperate. I mean habits, rhythms, little anchors throughout my day that gently tug me back toward care, toward strength. It starts in the morning, one glass of water before anything else. Hydration isn't just for glowing skin. It helps deliver nutrients where they need to go. I used to overlook water like it was the intern of nutrition. Not anymore. Then breakfast with intention. No more sugary pastries, or I'll just grab a granola bar. Real food. Greek yogurt with chia seeds. Whole grain toast. Maybe a spinach omelet if I'm feeling fancy. All laced with the quiet knowledge that calcium matters most when you get it from food. I also take a walk. Even if it's just 10 minutes, even if it's raining. Bones need impact, and sidewalks are free. I walk like my hips are being sculpted from the inside. Like my femurs are listening. Throughout the day, I do small things. Balance on one leg while brushing my teeth. Try it. It's harder than it sounds. Calf raises while waiting for the microwave. Stretch breaks that look suspiciously like interpretive dance. I've stopped treating movement as a chore. It's now a form of gratitude, an offering. And then there's the mental side. Because, here's the truth, no one wants to say out loud. Bone loss messes with your confidence. It makes you question every movement, every decision. Should I carry this? Should I climb that? Should I try this yoga pose? Or am I about to become a cautionary tale? That fear is real, but I refuse to let it run the show. So I made another pact with my mind. I will not live in fear of fractures. I will live in defiance of them. Not recklessly, but boldly. That means lifting weights even when I feel lazy. Saying yes to hikes even when they seem steep. Dancing in my living room, even when the dog looks horrified. And yes, it means sometimes resting too. Because bones don't just need stress, they need recovery. Sleep stillness, peace. I protect my sleep like it's a rare crystal. No screens in bed. Magnesium at night. Lavender pillow spray like I'm starring in a spa commercial. Historians still debate whether ancient people had better rest cycles than us, given their lack of artificial light and natural work rhythms. But I'll say this. I sleep better now than I did in my 20s. Not just because of age, but because of intention. And here's today's strange but true fact. Parrotfish, those bright tropical reef fish, build parts of their skeleton using aragonite, a form of calcium carbonate. They literally poop sand, thousands of pounds of it per year, contributing to the formation of tropical beaches. So yeah, if a fish can build bone and make beaches, I can do a few squats. I've also started writing letters to my future self. Little notes that say, "Thanks for sticking with the resistance bands," or "You'll be glad you took that vitamin D every morning." It sounds cheesy, but it works. It reminds me that everything I do today adds up to someone I want to meet down the road. And that's really the point. We're not trying to be invincible. We're trying to arrive strong, steady, upright. We're trying to meet the future, not in fear, but with a quiet kind of pride. The kind that says, "I didn't let you down. I carried you here, and I'll keep carrying you." So here's the pact in full. I will nourish you. I will move you. I will rest you. I will listen. I will not be perfect, but I will not ignore you again. Because my bones, they deserve that. After all the years they held me up silently, the least I can do is return the favor. And maybe, just maybe one day, far in the future, some archaeologist will dig up my skeleton and think, "Wow, she moved, she lived, she tried," and that will be enough.